Let's take a few moments and look at HTML validation. We've been having Dreamweaver generate a lot of HTML code for us, and we've talked about what is valid code and the different versions of HTML and CSS for that matter. And we've talked about the importance of valid code. For instance, it comes to mind when we were talking about, for CSS, for the different CSS selectors, we were talking about whether you were to use an ID or a class. And we used an example where you might use an ID for your sidebar in your content div. And then later you realized you needed another sidebar content div, and so you just use those IDs again. And I told you that it wasn't going to break the internet if you did that, that you'd probably get away with it. But that's an example of something that's invalid code, yet the browser tends to work well with it. It just tries its best, so it usually works out okay. But you can generate code that has various errors in it. And after a while, your errors are going to tend to cause a problem for you. So you'll reach a point at which your page doesn't display how you want it to anymore. And so you're going to have to go back and debug through the errors and fix them all until you get the thing working right. So it's always best to try and have error-free code in the first place. So to look at code validation, I've gone to w3.org, which is the World Wide Web Consortium. So they're in charge of all of the rules that tell the browsers how to work, the standards that you have set up right now. So they also have validators that we can use to check our code. So if you go to their page, you look over here on the right and you see where it has W3C Validator Suite. We could look at CSS, but right now we're going to look at HTML. So I'm going to click on that HTML link right there. This brings us to a page for markup validation service. Now, we can validate a couple different ways. One is we can validate by the web address. So we could just type a web address right here and say check, and it'll go check a live page. So that definitely works for sites you already have up and running. We can validate by file upload. So I could go find a file on my page, and we could do that. Or I can validate by direct input. And since I have Dreamweaver open right now and I've been working on some pages, I'm going to just do a validate by direct input. So I'm going to click on that link. And then actually I'm going to flip over to Dreamweaver. So this is a file we've been working on. This is our vertical navigation file that we've just recently done. And I have source code sitting over here on the left. So I'm going to click over here. I'm going to do a Command A for select all, and then a Command C for copy. So I have all of that in the memory at this point. And I'm going to go back over to Firefox and click right here where it says enter the markup to validate, and I'm just going to paste it right in there. So there's my whole page that I'm working on right there, all the way from the doc type at the top, which is important because this is what tells it to use XHTML1 transitional as it validates. It goes all the way down through the entire page. Okay, so with that pasted there, I'm going to just click on the check button. Give it a moment to run through, and see, this did pretty good. So this document was successfully checked as XHTML1 transitional. So that's really good. It says it passed. It does say that it has one warning. When I scroll down and look at the warning, so it looks like the warning actually has to do with the direct input. So it says using direct input mode, UTF-8 character encoding assumed. So that's because I copy-pasted it as opposed to using it live on the internet or uploading the file. So we're doing okay with that. Let's scroll a little bit further down here, and we get a congratulations. And then it talks about valid icons on your web page. So there may be times that you want to put an icon or a text link on it stating that your code is valid. And so this is an icon or graphic that they are offering here to let you use. You notice to the right of it right here, there's some code that you can paste onto your page. So it's a paragraph. It has an open P tag and a close P tag. So I'm going to just highlight that, and I'm going to go copy that. Okay, so I'm copying that code right there, and I'm going to go back over to Dreamweaver. So we are going to do this in the project that you're working on, and I've asked you to put this in the footer of your project. So I'm coming down here and looking at my footer. So I have a footer div, I have a paragraph down here right now. I'm going to click at the end of that type and hit a return and put a new paragraph in. So if I go look at code, there's my footer div right there. Here's the paragraph that gives credit to the design. And here's an empty paragraph that I just added right there. Since I have a paragraph copied into memory right now, I'm going to highlight this paragraph, and then I'm just going to paste right on top of it. So I've replaced it with the paragraph that they gave me. So looking at the code, what they gave me right here, there's the paragraph that we pasted in. You notice that there's a link sitting within it. It points to validator.w3.org. So when you click on this, it's going to take the user to w3.org, and it is going to carry the URL of the web page you're on and validate that page. Okay, so that's where it has the link to take them right there. In the midst of that link right here, you see that it has an image tag, and instead of it pointing to a local image that you have in your root folder, you notice that the source starts with an HTTP, and so it's actually pointing to their website, so they have the icon there for you to utilize. So if I go back to split view and click over here, okay, it looks like a broken link right there, not a link, a broken image. But if I go to live view, it should preview it for me. Okay, it's taking a moment to do, but I know that it will preview the icon for me. So scroll down. So there's the icon. So that's how we put the icon in there, so that people can click on that if they want to validate your code. Let me go back out of live view for a second, look back at our code. You always have the option, you don't have to use an image, though that's what they're supplying you. I could come in here and highlight the image because we know that whatever sits within the A tag is the link. So if I didn't want to use an image, I instead wanted to use text, I could come down here and I could type the words valid HTML, something like that, and have that within my link. Now if I go back to split and click over here, you see that now I have text that has that link instead. I could even pull them up onto one line if I wanted to do something like that. So now I have the site credit and the valid HTML link on the same line. Now the question often comes up, why do you want to have a link down here validating your HTML? What is the usefulness of that? Truth is, a lot of clients aren't going to know what to do with that. It's not going to mean anything to them. So if I am selling a website to the local florist down the street and they're looking at my site, something like that, they're not going to understand what valid code is or what good it does for them. Though I do think it should be part of your process of explaining the value of valid code and why you work that way. On the other hand, if you are doing web development and you have somebody checking out your work to develop something for them, they definitely would be looking at your code, seeing if it's valid, seeing if you're creating valid code. So it can be a very important thing to have on your page. Okay, so that's why we put it there.